Thank you all for coming to the October 2nd meeting of the Norfolk Advisory Committee. We have a fairly short agenda tonight. We will take a roll call. We will hear a presentation from the school department and the school building committee on the work that they've done since town meeting in the spring. We need to discuss, Justin will be here to discuss sort of where the select board is at with the warrant and also discuss capital items. And then I want to discuss the schedule a little bit. We have, we adjusted our schedule to accommodate the schedules of the superintendent and folks from the schools to get them on tonight. There's some flexibility with the planning board, and I want to talk to you out about that. But first, I'll take attendance. Rob Garrity.
Here.
Ken Fitzgerald.
Here.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Here.
Joyce Terrio.
Here.
Melissa Sear.
Here.
Thais Hickman.
Here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. We just got started. As obviously we're doing the roll call, and away we go. So the first order of business is to hear from the school department and the school building committee. Whoever would like to come sit at the table with us, and there are a couple microphones since I don't think everyone's going to fit.
That's so nice.
As we'll recall, in the spring, the town adopted a warrant article to authorize the school building committee to do some further looking at the potential expansion at Freeman Kennedy. And we'll be hearing some information on that tonight. And I'll turn it over to...
I can kick it off.
Okay. Introduce yourself and...
Yes, of course. So, hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm Grace Lockhead. I am a member of the school committee and the chair of the building committee. We're obviously going to be presenting to the advisory board tonight. The committee, just quickly, obviously the warrant created this committee. It is comprised by myself, Medora Champagne, who is also on the school committee, Ingrid Alardi, who's obviously the superintendent. We have 3 members of the community that were selected by the select board. They applied and interviewed. So we have Mike Ryan here with us tonight, Mike Lucarello, who may be joining us, but had a prior commitment, so maybe not. And Justin Whalen, who unfortunately couldn't be with us. Also, Justin Casanova Davis sits with us, and we are advised by the wonderful Justin Tebow from AI3. And so before we get kicked off, Ingrid and Justin will take us through the majority of the presentation, but I did just want to say, as a relatively new member of the school committee, this was an exciting project to embark on, and I wasn't necessarily sure what to expect, but I do think it was a really worthwhile exercise and an eye-opening one as well, especially with the addition of our town community members. As we all came in with relatively fresh eyes, this project's obviously been being talked about for a long time, so it was really interesting to go through the information with fresh eyes and different perspectives and really get into it. So we had a lot of really good conversations. We've been meeting since January, and I think it's been a really thorough, really fulfilling process. So, I appreciate the board creating the building committee. So I will hand it off to Ingrid to get started.
Great. So Erica's going to project the presentation for us. And thank you again for having us tonight and for juggling your schedule. We have, I know you invited us to come next week, but we actually have a community forum on the project that night, so we had a conflict. So I appreciate very much.
Appreciate that you chose the community over us. So.
Well, we had to change it once, so we didn't want to have too many dates floating out there, so I apologize for that.
No, I'm being serious. I fully understand that. So.
We'll start with I'm just going to wait till we can get it on the screen for you guys so you can follow along, and I'll certainly send the slides if anybody wants copies afterwards.
If you could, that'd be great.
Yep.
You can send them to Erica and me, and then
Yep.
we'll distribute them. So.
Perfect. There's also a recording. It's a similar presentation that we gave to the school committee as well as the select board. So if you want to see the presentation again, I don't know, do you have Norfolk Cable filming tonight or?
Yes.
Okay, so then there'll be 3 presentations you can watch.
Yep.
All right. So can I project on that one or no? All right. Then can I?
It is right there.
All right, so can I turn your screen so I can do that? So I just want to start us off, and if you can see the screen there, with a brief overview of the project from start to finish. So when we first started looking at the enrollment challenges that we're facing in Norfolk, that was back in 2017. And in April of 2017, we put together with the town a space study committee. At the time, there were a lot of Chapter 40B and large-scale developments happening. The public was very concerned about what impact that would have in the future on the growth in the schools. So we put together a space study committee to start to look at what potential options might be available. In November at the town meeting, the town voted to fund a high-level conceptual design study to see whether or not, based on the enrollment projections we had, whether a single addition at the Freeman could address the critical shortage needs at both buildings. So that was voted on in 2017. We hired Flansburgh, who did the design for the original Freeman Kennedy, to do that high-level conceptual design. What we did, we did an enrollment study, an enrollment projection study, so we could see what we were expecting to see over the next 10 years of growth. We looked at what we would need for classroom spaces. We talked about the best way to arrange that. We had looked at possibly moving a grade level from H. Olive Day up. We looked at a lot of different scenarios and decided the most feasible was to move the preschool up to the Freeman Kennedy because the preschool doesn't need to access the gym, the cafeteria, the lunch program. So Flansburgh did that study, and they presented their results, and we presented those to the select board in October of 2019. At that time, we did get preliminary cost estimates from a professional cost estimating company, and we brought that forward. We then moved forward after that for 3 rounds of application to MSBA to share the cost of a potential building design, building expansion project to move into a full feasibility study. We applied to MSBA in 2021 and 22. Unfortunately, during that same period of time, COVID hit. MSBA was prioritizing schools that were older that needed ventilation systems, other things like that. So we were turned down multiple times. In May of 2022, we brought forward the request to move forward with funding the full feasibility independently, which was about $300,000 ask of the town. Brought that to town meeting. That was voted on and appropriated. We did a public bidding process with a group of people from the town side as well as school committee. We interviewed architectural firms, selected AI3, and spent a year with AI3 going through the full feasibility, which looked at site work needs, mechanical systems, traffic studies, all of that. So it's a fairly significant process. Then we brought the recommendation to move forward to the design phase to the advisory board. I think given the significant financial constraints the town was facing at that time, we were asked to consider going back and re-exploring the value or the possibility of looking at modular solutions, whether those would be more cost-effective for the town. So we shifted that warrant article and brought forward a recommendation in the spring to move forward with an expanded feasibility to look at modular options, as well as any other viable options the committee could consider. We did look at leasing space and a few other things. So we did that. In the fall, we appointed a building committee. The building committee, the first task was to identify an alternate demographer to do an independent comparison, independent demography study. We had multiple proposals we reviewed. We selected a firm out, Demographic Analytic Advisors. They're a very well-regarded, reputable firm in the field. They do a lot of work in Connecticut, and they do a lot of work in North Carolina with big systems as well as local school districts. So we had that done. We looked at, based on their data, some potential modular options. We got pricing, and then the committee is now have finalized what we think is the best recommendation, and we're here tonight to share that with you.
Great.
All right, go to the next slide. I won't go through these all in detail, but we brought you a recommendation to establish a building committee because we felt it was important over the course of the last year to engage the community more and make sure that we had fresh eyes on the project, more people, more voices to be heard. School committee had a charge, again, to look at the feasibility for modular solutions, to review and identify a demographer, to conduct the extended feasibility study, and to make a final recommendation to the select board and the school committee. I won't go through this again, but this is, again, the scope of work, and we can go on to the next. We did have a new company do a demography study. Those results were presented, so if anybody wants to see the presentation that they did, there was a joint meeting at the school committee and the select board where we presented that, as well as at a building committee meeting, so those are both recorded. What was found was not surprising. We talked about the gap we saw in the data last year when we came that really was around COVID, where we saw more students going to private or homeschooling, and so it wasn't matching the NSDEC trends. That's why we recommissioned and did a new study. What they found is that they actually think the NSDEC trend line is very accurate, and they do feel it was the increase in homeschooling and independent private education that generated that gap in what the projections were and what we were seeing in the schools. They also felt that that gap would persist for a couple of years. Even though our enrollment growth is going up, they think we won't close the gap with the NSDEC predictions for a few years. But they actually predict we're going to exceed those projections going forward after 5 years. So within 10 years, they're projecting more than NSDEC had for new enrollment. It was a much more in-depth, detailed study. Definitely would encourage you to watch the presentation that they did. It was very detailed. They looked at address level data, so they looked at homes that sold, what the student yield was of those actual homes. We had to give 10 years worth of student level address data anonymously so they could track that. They didn't do it based on a formula of bedrooms or room size. They looked at actual patterns of in-migration. What they are finding is that when students enter the Norfolk schools, they stay in the Norfolk schools. We do not lose kids that start with us in kindergarten, they stay. Students that go homeschooling or start in private generally stay out. So that's why they're projecting that the gap we saw, the kids that left during COVID probably will stay out. We're projecting them remaining out. We didn't predict a significant new yield from any of the growth. Most of the new developments were not considered in this demography study. What is driving the increased enrollment is increases in lower elementary class sizes, and it's steady patterns of in-migration that have been pretty consistent over periods of time. People moving out of urban areas with young children into Norfolk. Our kindergarten class sizes have gone up significantly, and they continue to come in higher than we used to have. And as those students roll up, there's growth across the district. So that's what we looked at.
Can I ask a quick question while you switch?
Yep.
Do you know the date of the presentation that you referenced?
There was a couple.
Okay.
I can get it to you.
Right.
I'll get it to you. And I can send you the full reports on our website,
Yeah,
too, if you want to look at that.
All right. Thank you.
Again, this is just a snapshot of enrollment growth in each
Information.
holiday. You can see this really aligns with what they found in the study.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
If we have questions, would you prefer we raise them as you're there or hold them to the end?
I would like us to try to hold them.
Hold them?
Okay.
Unless they're clarifying questions.
It's on the demographic study.
Okay.
So
Okay,
I'll-
go ahead.
Thank you.
So you can
No, good
see
job.
in this,
Go ahead, then.
this is a snapshot of data from the last 10 years. Our growth in HOD has been much faster. We're up about 100 students. That's, again, as it's rolling up into Freeman. We're starting to see that growth at Freeman. This is just a snapshot of what that looked like. Go to the next one. Again, this is just a picture of what the forecast is from 2024 to 2034 based on the DAA demographic study. Shows the steady continued growth. A couple of hundred students between now and 2035 projected to enroll. Is it okay if I just do this? All right. All right, I'm going to turn it. Do you have questions on demographics before I turn it to the feasibility part?
One question.
Yep.
The initial enrollment projection started in 2018.
2019.
2019. The slide, if you could back up one, this doesn't, nope, I'm sorry, this one, the enrollment forecast. This one doesn't start until 2024. The
Yes,
one that you
because-
had in 2019, do you have any forecast data available between when that study was done, 2019, and the start of this line on 2024? And part
Yep.
2 of that question is it'd be really interesting to see this slide
Yep.
overlaid with the enrollment actuals. So
Yep.
at least I mean, without having to dig into however many pages of the demographic and enrollment study, just getting an eyeball look of this overlaid, I think would lend some measure of credibility to how accurate has the forecast been based on actuals
Yep.
to date, and then we could at least extrapolate perhaps accuracy going into
Sure.
into the future.
Yep, I think there is a slide in the actual report that shows exactly that. They show the original, we actually had 2 NESDEC studies done, one in 2017, we had it redone in 2019. We have the projection from NESDEC, and they were really on trend with their projections until COVID, and then we saw it start to drop. DAA study follows them slightly under, they're projecting under, and then we catch up and then exceed. But all of that data is in the report, and I can certainly see if I can pull that slide and send it to you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, I'll turn it to Justin.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Tebow, a principal at AI3 Architects, and we've been working with the town for a couple of years now on the Freeman Kennedy project. Getting into it, really, the task for the last year, we'll call it, really the modular configuration as well as the updated demographic study. Our first task was to take the new demographic study, the enrollment numbers, and to confirm the work was done previously to make sure everything aligned. What we have confirmed after the DAA study, the recent demographic study, is that the numbers still hold true for the number of classrooms required to support the demographics, as well as the size of the building. So what we're looking at is, at Freeman Kennedy, 33 classrooms. So it would be 27 existing, 6 new. It would be 7 pre-K classrooms, and then that equates to approximately 36,000 square feet. That's not just classrooms, that's all the support required, all the specialists, all the special education component from HOD is coming over, so that 36,000 represents a number of different programs, but ultimately the class count from previous studies still holds true moving forward over the past year. So if we look at the next slide, this is a graphic representation of the boiled down or the condensed version of all the different options that the building committee looked at. Starting from left to right, on the left is the permanent building addition. So this is actually the study that was completed a year ago. It's connecting the 2 academic wings out the back of the building with a permanent build. Again, steel superstructure, concrete floors, really constructed the same way as the existing Freeman Kennedy. Moving to the right one is option 1 for modular. So we have 3 modular options right here. The first modular option is a 2-story modular component. And this option here, the task was to try to make it as close to an apples-to-apples comparison as we can by looking at where it's located on the site, as well as by looking at access and the rest. And I'll get into a little bit more detail on these as we get forward. Option 2 for modulars is also a 2-story option. We pushed it further away from the existing building to avoid that current access road. There's utilities underneath the access road, so we wanted to try to avoid it to see if there was an additional cost savings of moving the modulars further away. To fit within the property, it turned into an L-shaped configuration just to fit within that area. And then option 3 for the modulars all the way on the right was looked at whether it was a single-story option. So instead of 36,000 square feet split over 2 floors, it was 36,000 square feet over 1 floor. That footprint, that large footprint, would not fit behind the existing Freeman Kennedy. So that had to be located on those fields out in front. And you can see the importance of where that's located within the site. So if we go to the next slide, a little bit more detail about the permanent build. So because it is permanently built, we can have direct indoor connection. Students can walk from the existing right into the new, no real thresholds. It would redirect the service road, again, to push it out beyond that building expansion, and minimal tree removal required. Again, these are just some bullet points, and we can go into more detail if there are any questions. So looking at the floor plans, The spaces identified really fall into 3 buckets, as you will. The first is gaining back previously lost space or spaces the district repurposes just to meet the current enrollment demand. The next bucket is the pre-K component, moving from HOD over to Freeman Kennedy. And the third bucket is any new program required to accommodate the increase in enrollment of students. So any space within green on the screen is located within the existing building. These would be light renovations and really just a repurpose and a reconfiguration of where these services are located. Again, we're talking paint, minimal work. The crux of this, the majority of this expansion is noted in the red on the left. That is the true addition. Floor 1, approximately 18,000 square feet. Floor 2, another 18,000 square feet. The first floor includes the pre-K component. That is moved over from HOD, so it includes all the pre-K classrooms, the required pre-K play, all their restrooms. It also includes the special education component, as well as the nurse for the pre-K. So those become the administration and the control points for this addition. There will be doors to separate the pre-K component from the older kids with card access and security doors. So students, older students can't just freely walk in, but still providing that connectivity for administration, security personnel, et cetera, to access that first floor. So
And can I just jump on that too? One of the reasons, again, that we thought about moving the preschool is, again, moving the preschool out of the H. Olive Day creates 5 additional open classrooms, plus the special ed office suite. So it creates significant additional space at H. Olive Day to absorb new enrollment, but those students do not require access to the gym, music room, art room, so they don't add in. We have trouble scheduling all of the children we have into those programs, so we don't have capacity. And we also, by moving the special education offices, have an administrator and clerical support monitoring the door and the entrance, and so we won't have to add staffing to manage the operations of that area.
Yep. So moving to the second floor, this becomes the older kids, the grades 3 through 6. This is where those additional classrooms are. This is where teacher collaboration spaces. This is where the STEAM classrooms are. This is where special education components are. Making that bridge, that connection between the current 2 existing academic wings. Again, the spaces in green are repurposed existing spaces, and as part of the process, the entire school was looked at holistically from an ideal service provider situation. So some of these green spaces, for instance, on the right, you see speech, social worker, and psychologist. Those have been located centrally to all students, so you don't have to circulate down the 3rd grade wing to get services, or the 5th grade wing, whatever it may be. So by having the ability to just relocate existing spaces, it's not adding space, it's relocating based upon ideal locations for this. That's what's noted in green.
Yep, and I'll just jump on that just to make it concrete. For example, in a wing here, like we have this section here, we have all of our, let's say, 4th grade classrooms in one wing. They're all clustered together. I don't have room in that wing for more 4th grade classrooms, but the art room is currently centered in the middle of that wing. It would make more sense to move the art room to the addition and put the 4th grade classroom there. So it's not an additional space. We're just shifting things around our existing spaces so that we have integrity to the programming.
So looking at it from a site plan perspective.
Sorry, can I just ask a clarifying question? So how many additional classrooms would be in that new wing on the 2nd floor?
Right now, 6, right?
Yes.
6 additional classrooms.
Okay.
And again, that's just based on what we anticipate needing from the demographic study.
Okay.
So looking at it from a site plan perspective, with the pre-K component coming over, different scheduling, multiple arrivals, drop-offs, there's a need to have a dedicated pickup and drop-off for that program. So what has been worked into the project here, as you see, is their own entrance. Freeman Kennedy would still function as is from the field side, the athletic side, the front of the building, but this would support the pre-K component with student drop-off as well as additional parking spaces for parents to walk in, students, etc. Also, it shows the required pre-K play, the outdoor space, needed to support the program here.
And I just want to jump back to your question because I can see Rob's question maybe being formed, but maybe not. When I say 6 new classrooms, that's 6 new academic classrooms. We actually end up with 9 because we would move the current art room out to the new space, and that's another classroom. We'd move the current tech space over there. We lost the science room, but we would put a science room there. So we pick up other classrooms through the
Reclaiming space you
relocate.
lost.
Right.
Okay, yep.
So we're going to go through the modular options. A lot of similarities between all these options. We're going to go through option 1 first. So this is the 2-story modular option. This is the option closest to the permanent build that we just reviewed. Initially, we looked at it being an indirect connection to the existing building. That's based upon occupancy, based upon allowable floor area per building code, construction type, a number of different reasons. Throughout the process, we were tasked to look at, okay, what would it take to truly make it connected, to truly get an apples to apples comparison. So as the process moved forward, that component was embedded to truly make it connected so you could walk from one space, from one building to the other. There are some gymnastics, as you will, that we have to do from a building code standpoint. So multiple fire doors, firewalls, vestibules, etc. But that has all been embedded within the project. So this again is the modular option, again connecting the 2 academic wings. We are looking at, if you go to the next page, it becomes pretty clear. Think of it as like Legos or Duplos. You have your building block of modular dimensions and you're stacking accordingly. We do have some flexibility with interior walls of how we can say group 2 or 3 of these units together to create classrooms or subdivide, but in reality where we have this pretty rigid structural grid that we have to follow in modular that we have to follow. Again, all of these spaces on the first floor reflect the permanent build, so it's the pre-K component. And then the spaces on the second floor here actually reflect an entire grade level to be located within the modulars. Again, 36,000 square feet, 18,000 on the first floor, 18,000 on the second floor. Slight variation, we got as close as we could based on those units, those modular units, the Lego block units, as you will. But again, you can see here the constraints of the actual modulars within it.
And I would just say, when we looked at the modulars, we chose, because we originally looked at 3 detached plans, we did not relocate the art room, the science room in a modular plan because that would require every student to travel. So we decided it was more educationally appropriate to put 1 full grade level in classrooms out. So it's the same amount of space, it's just organized differently based on the educational needs.
Right. Site plan looks very similar. Again, located in the back, connecting the 2 wings. It would have its own dedicated access, parking, etc. So it's very similar to the previous permanent build option. If we go to option 2, this is the L configuration. Again, we pull it out of that service road, and we actually make an L configuration just to physically fit on the property back there within the constraints. And again, it's a 2-story option. If you go to the next slide, you can start to see how it's configured on the site, again, with dedicated access, parking, etc. Same configuration, again, pre-K on the first floor, and an upper grade on the second floor. And then option 3.
Just to point out, with this option, students, you can see, would have to exit and walk across a walkway to enter the Freeman Kennedy. There is no direct connection.
Right. So option 3, this is the single-story option. We are tasked to see if there was significant cost savings by going to a single story instead of 2 stories. Also, just to fully explore all the options of where it can fit on site and to fully explore everything. Footprint is twice as big, and so you can see the configuration here. What would happen is that, say, that long left leg would be the pre-K, and then that L shape on the right would be the upper grades, or vice versa. Again, similar from a size and an internal configuration. And then you can see how it lands on the site. We could utilize some existing parking and circulation, but there would still have to be some reconfiguration for that front area to provide that dedicated access with it. And again, as Superintendent just mentioned, this option also, you'd have to walk outside across parking and that area there off the corner of the gym to get to the modular units.
And with this option, would this be eating into the fields then?
Yeah, we would lose a play field.
Okay.
In this model.
A playground playfield or a recreation playfield, if you
It's a
understand my...
school, it's the school field that is enclosed by the bus loop, so it's not used by
The
the
one
rec
inside the
department.
fence?
Yeah.
The large open, the only large.
Where
open
the school
space.
used to be.
That's not the field that we did irrigation and lighting on last
No,
year,
no,
right?
that's, no.
No,
Those are rec fields.
it is
But it-
where we
it's the-
generally,
it's-
it is where you bring med plates in.
It's where the old
currently.
school used to be.
Okay.
So that's an overview of the 4 different options. Now, within each of the modular options, there are 2 levels of finishes, a finish level A and a finish level B. Finish level A is more durable, but more costly. Finish level B, less durable and less costly. Couple items I want to point out between A and B, just some of the big level items. Finish level A, so A is the more expensive, would have full foundation walls, whereas level B would have piers. Finish level A would have fiber cement siding, like Hardy. Finish level B would have texture 11 plywood. Finish level A would have aluminum windows. Finish level B would have vinyl windows. Interior finishes. Finish level A would have porcelain tile on the floors in the bathroom, as well as porcelain tile on the walls in the bathroom, whereas finish level B would have VCT floors in the bathroom and fiberglass panels on the walls. And then another item towards the bottom is the actual heating system. Finish level A would have air source heat pumps supporting the building, whereas finish level B would have individual wall-hung units supporting each of the spaces. Think of almost like a hotel, as you will. Whereas the air source heat pumps would be larger units to support multiple rooms.
So they would not be mini splits. Essentially, it's mini splits versus a ducted system. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
May I ask a question? So are these applicable to both the 1-story and 2-story
Yes.
modular units?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I
What
don't
we
mean,
tried to do was look at 3 options and 2 price points for each option.
understood. So I don't mean to get ahead, so just stop me if I'm getting too far ahead. But is there a simple percentage you could apply of type A is X% more expensive than type B? And the second part of that question is there any projection in terms of either lifespan or future maintenance cost for
We
both
have
type A and type
Both
B?
for you coming right up.
I was
So,
gonna-
Yep,
Ask, can you, I'd like
can
to
give it to you
finish.
right
the-
here. There
I'd
you
like to
go.
finish the presentation on the actual architectural stuff.
Yep.
And then we'll ask questions.
Okay.
And then we're going to move on to the article
all right.
or the request.
So that's actually a really good lead into the next slide. Back to the graphic matrix, but now with prices assigned to each of these different options. So all the way to the left, the permanent building addition is 37.9 million. Option 1, that finish level A is 34.9, finish level B is 32.2. Option 2, level A is 30.4, level B is 27.9. Option 3 is 31.3 for level A and 28.5 for level B. Approximately 2.5 million or so from A to B for finish. Just super high level math there.
I just want to say, because we skipped, so once we looked at all of the design options, AI3 sent this out to a professional estimating company. It's the same company we used back with Flansburgh when we did the original feasibility study. Do you want to talk about PM&C?
Yeah, PM&C. So PM&C has been around for over 20 years as a company, and they've been estimating for longer than that. They estimate all of our projects. So AI3 only designs schools, educational market. PM&C estimates all of our projects, as well as many of our competitors. And they actually estimated, as Superintendent mentioned, the Flansburgh study previously as well. So it was a little bit of a a continuation from their part to update their numbers based upon the new information available with escalation, current markets, trends, et cetera. But they estimate all of our projects as well as all of our competitors' projects within the public market, so.
Want to talk longevity of each option?
Yeah, so longevity, permanent building addition, it's a 50-plus year building. I mean, you're talking steel superstructure, concrete floors. It's similar to what you have now. From a modular component, level A, 20 to 25 years, and that is based upon maintenance and upkeep. And then level B is anywhere from 15 to 20, so even less. And again, all those numbers are based on maintenance and upkeep. The materials aren't quite as durable, so things tend to move a little bit. So that's where you start to get some finish failures. But that's where ultimately it lands.
Just to put that into percentage terms from my math skills, not discounting the full building, just on the modulars. Level A seems to be 8 to 9% more expensive, but level B seems to have a lifespan of 20% less. Is that?
Without doing the math, that sounds
good.
high level. That seems accurate.
Is there a
if
whiteboard
someone
we
wants
can
to
get
check the
going?
math.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the comparison of,
Right.
we'll get what we pay for. So an 8 to 9% increase in spending on modular will get us an additional 25% lifespan, 25% lifespan on the building. That's what's projected, at least.
Exactly, just for the modulars. And again, even finished level A for modulars is approximately half the lifespan of a permanent building.
Thank you.
Yes. Couple other items. I don't know if you want to talk about.
Oh, we can.
If we're going to get to the recommendation, I'd like to actually stop and see if anyone has any questions on the presentation on the building designs that were presented. Yes, Ken?
I do. So I'm living this in the community I work. I'm a chair of a building committee, and it's a renovation and expansion. And what we found was I actually think the same company did our cost estimating, the renovating and adding here is ballpark 1,000 per square foot construction, the whole cost. And we're finding it's coming in at almost double that. So smaller scale project, so less people want to bid on a smaller scale project, more people want to build on a big project, but how confident is your estimator on this kind of holding to this 1,000 per square foot? And is there any sort of acceleration for if this doesn't happen until next year or the year after? Are they looking at 5% per year, 10% per year? What's the contingency?
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff right there, so let's try to. They have escalated this based upon working through, essentially going through this fall, moving forward with design, and bidding it next fall, late next fall.
So work not starting till 26? Spring of 26?
Spring of 2026, shovels in the ground, we'll call it. So that's what they escalated it to. If that moves, then yes, there absolutely would be additional escalation that is included within these numbers here. One thing.
What was the average escalation per year? It was a range, 5 to 12?
It ranges with a COVID blip. I mean, previously it was.
They escalated ours 6.5% for just to
Right.
not start work till April,
Yeah,
6 months from now.
yeah. I think we had
So-
heard 5 to 12% is like,
Yeah.
it's somewhere in that range per each year you delay.
Yeah, it varies depending on the scope and the size of the project. Real quick question for you. What year is the building you're adding on to?
2016,
Okay.
wood frame building, no frills.
Okay. Wood frame, like 2x4?
No, it's a wood construction, public safety building.
Okay.
It's built like this.
Got it. Yep, okay.
No steel, no bricks, no nothing.
Yep.
So there's a lot more involved here, even more trades than we have to deal with, things like that. So
Yep.
I'm curious, because I'm living it now at a smaller scale, and we're just seeing the numbers come back that every estimate, and if you look at MSBA right now, I mean, some of the building projects, the new construction is over, what was it, North Shore somewhere, it was over 2,200 per square foot is the most expensive one right now for new construction. And new is supposed to be cheaper than
Right.
renovating, because we're not tearing into walls, replacing HVAC and all that. So That's where I struggle with this 1,000 per square foot being truly believable with what is going on out there, just with some of their other projects.
Yeah, so within that, there is contingency embedded within it. One thing that, which I'm honestly surprised that there is that many, your square foot is that high based upon a new building. With this being a newer building, there's less unknowns. If this was a 30, 40, 50-year-old building, then there's a lot of unknowns once you start opening up the walls.
Oh, we have no unknowns either with as-built and everything, and they still don't.
Right, exactly.
No one
And
believes it,
that's
they
why-
just
that's
want to
why-
keep
exactly.
it.
How we have been designing this and working through for estimating with systems is that this is almost, it's going to be treated from a system standpoint as a standalone building. So all your mechanicals will be standalone. It's avoiding any of the unknowns of tying into the existings throughout, as well as matching. The intent is to match the existing look, feel, materials, etc. So based upon that information, based upon escalation out, that's where the numbers are landing. So.
One thing with your question, though, that I think we're going to get into when we talk about the warrant article, the warrant article's around design services only, not the full project, with the intent that once you have a full design, you bid the project, and we would come to town meeting with a set cost.
15% for design, or is it?
Well, we're just about to jump into that one.
Oh,
Yeah,
hit us
hold on,
with the
Ken,
5
hold on,
million?
hold on, Ken.
I know what's coming.
Yeah,
Well, hold on. Take a deep breath.
it's not a surprise.
Bob?
So, is the 1,000 including FFE?
Is what?
Does the 1,000 a square foot include FFE? Is the
Can you explain what FFA, Rob, is? Stop showing off.
furnishings, fixtures, and equipment?
So, backing up, the 1,000 a square foot, I think you're just doing the quick math of 37.9 divided by 36,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, so that is total project cost. That is construction costs plus all contingencies, both estimating, design, construction, as well as owners. That is also technology and FF&E,
Yeah.
as well as all fees. So that is everything,
All in.
all in.
Right.
Total project cost.
So on the schematic designs, all of the options that are behind the school impact the existing drainage there.
Yes.
That's been accounted for, and it's going to be somewhere else. And
That was looked at in the feasibility study.
Okay.
Yeah. There's some things, it's not my field, but there's
Yep.
some things that have to be moved and relocated.
Yeah, you have one of your utility rings runs right underneath that back access road, as well as stormwater management. So that has all been accounted for in pricing.
And that's the same, you mentioned it for the first option.
Yep.
It's the same cost for either option, for the permanent versus the first.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the site.
And there's no utility, less utility reconfiguration for 2, and even less for 3.
Correct. Yep.
I got a question about the slide. Are those the additional capital improvement items in the fine print down the bottom that I almost need glasses to read?
Yeah.
Are those included in the total 37.9, or are those?
So what we had done, and when we were first looking at this project back in 2019, the town was starting to develop their long-term capital plan. And our facilities director that we shared between the schools and town said, these are items that are going to be end of life by the time you do the building project. So in order for the town to plan, it would be good to price them if they were done when you have a team on site and a crane on site, so that you could compare getting estimates to whether or not you would want to include them in this or put them separately as a town capital. So they're not related to the building project. The building project pricing is for the all-in, but we did price what these replacement costs is: the rooftop chillers, mechanical systems at the HL of Day, above my office in the Freeman Kennedy, that are end of life. They were 2 years old before they go on. They have a 15-year life expectancy. So those are end of life. The playground surfacing, again, is beginning to fail. So these are all capital items that would be included on the capital plan. We will get quotes when we're ready to do that, and we were just asked to get a cost comparison to see if there's savings so the town could plan. But they are not part of the building project.
Does anyone have any other questions on this part of the projects? And I think the next part is to discuss what your request is going to be, essentially.
I just have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if we delay on the capital improvement items, what is the impact as far, the financial impact and I guess just the lifespan of these particular items?
I think that Matt Malnrich would be the best person to speak to that when he comes to talk about capital. But we are Band-Aiding the mechanical chiller system a little bit right now, and it's limping along. I think ideally, it would probably make sense to do that when you're doing the building project. I do think not having a crane and a separate team build that and come out will generate savings, which is why we priced it, but everything goes up the longer you wait. I think we are pursuing some other possible funding sources for the playground surfacing, so, this is really, I think that would be prioritized under the capital discussion when you're looking. I can't speak for the department needs in other departments, but at least you'd have a comparison as to whether it makes sense to, when you look at the total cost, what makes sense.
We will be talking to Justin and the town team on the 16th about capital, and I was looking at two of those numbers we could probably try to fit under the cap without borrowing, but maybe, depending on when we did them. The other two need to be borrowed for, so. Yes, Rob?
So this is more of a general question. So I had in my brain that the reason we weren't doing SBA was SBA doesn't pay for sheer enrollment projects.
No, so MSBA has an open application process where anybody can submit applications.
Yeah.
One of their priorities is that you can apply for funding for cost share for overcrowding. And so we have applied 3 times for that. So it is an eligible reason. But recently, they've done a look across the state. The majority of schools in Massachusetts are 50, 60, 70 years old.
Yeah.
So when I just looked at the projects that got into MSBA recently, and they are schools that were built in the 1960s, and they're entire schools. So they're only, what is it, 18% or?
Not even,
They bring in-
it's super low.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's for all
so we're
intents
being
and
bumped out because we are not in the critical need that they're, as far as they're concerned, when they're looking at all of the applications.
That's fair.
However, I would say, moving forward, if the town does move forward a warrant article around design, does not prohibit us from applying again.
I've had some discussion. I think that the state, we might get some help from other agencies at the state level now, given our cooperation during the spring and through the summer on.
We can
other
help.
stuff, so,
We can
yes.
help. The Bay State shelter is intended to close in June, which would be prior to a project starting, but we certainly can apply again. I mean, there's no harm in applying, and if we were invited in and there was a cost savings, then you could reconsider, some of the work might have to be repeated, but it doesn't prohibit you from exploring that avenue.
Okay. If there are no other questions on the sort of the proposed projects, well, let's move on to the recommendation. Thank you.
So the building committee presented to the school committee, I think it was September 10th, and the school committee did vote unanimously to bring forward the recommendation to move forward with the brick and mortar building addition option, to bring that recommendation to the school committee and to the select board. The school committee voted unanimously to support that recommendation and to bring forward a warrant article to request funding for the design services portion of the building project at the fall town meeting. And I'm just going to jump to some of this may be obvious, but Medora, Grace, Mike, you want to speak to why they made that recommendation?
Mike, why don't you
Sure.
jump in? Can you see? I think he has a slide.
She did.
Okay, good.
Mike Graham, community member. So some of the key considerations that we looked at when we chose the permanent option was, first off, student safety and security. So with a number of the modular options, students could not travel between buildings independently. So in the event of emergency, it caused what we saw as potential security concerns. Also, just on a day-to-day basis, there's additional time needs that would be required by having a modular option, increased time for classrooms, increased, just having to move from building to building, which we saw as potential negative impact to the overall time on learning for the students. Impact on staffing and shared service delivery was also an area that we thought was of concern with the detached modular options, and then also loss of field and play space. And then for all of the modular options, just the maintenance, overall maintenance costs would be higher for both the detached modular as well as, for all three. And then I think the biggest point of consideration was just the longevity. So as we discussed, the longevity for the modular options span anywhere from 15 to 25 years, which is half the lifespan of a permanent option, which just when you look at it from a fiscal standpoint, didn't seem to make the most sense. And then for the brick and mortar, some of the positives is just, safer for students to travel independently, as I mentioned before, no negative impact on time and learning, lower maintenance costs, and again, just the longevity, 50-plus years, seems to make most sense from a fiscal standpoint.
All right. Do we,
Any questions?
what's the request? What's the dollar figure?
All right. Well, we have one more slide that I'm going to let Medora and
all
Grace
right.
speak to, and then we'll jump in.
That sounded very definitive, so I was wondering
Yeah,
what was going on.
sorry.
I mean, I do think that it's also important for us to kind of, at least at a high level, walk through our thoughts as a building committee on timing. There had been a fairly extensive discussion around, is now the right time to bring this project forward? Everyone is very aware of everything else that is going on in town from a capital standpoint. And I think we wanted to be both sensitive to that, but also sensitive to the needs of the school district and, what was going to be the most responsible thing to do to contain costs moving forward. So, unsurprisingly, and as is supported by all the demographic studies that we've had, our enrollment is continuing to grow. That's borne out through the data. I mean, for me, anecdotally, I can tell you that I have a sophomore in high school, and when he was in first grade, there were 5 first grade classrooms. There are now 9 first grade classrooms at the HOD, and they are around 20 to 21 students apiece. There is no shortage of students. The growth is happening. It's projected to be extended, continuous, and permanent. So we would like to get the ball rolling, I think, as quickly as possible, both to manage the needs of the district, but also to contain the cost of the project relative to escalation going forward. I'm trying to see what, actually, can I look at your cheat sheet? Thank you. We are simply out of space at H all of day. The current first lunch to rotate all children through lunch throughout the day and get it done before school ends begins at around 10:15, so they're having a brunch. It's just not a sustainable model for education and managing students within that facility. A building project is going to take 3 years. We'll need a year to design it. It'll be 2 years before you actually open the doors. I think there are some concerns that even within this time frame, we will see some disruptions to how education can be delivered before a new wing can actually be open, insofar as we'll have to repurpose additional specials classrooms and probably have some very pinchy years as far as class sizes. If we were to delay until the spring, an addition would not open, best case scenario, until the fall of 2028. And the delay in moving forward would also create the potential for a scenario where we are moving forward with a permanent building addition, but the zenith of enrollment is reached while the building is happening, and in addition to spending $37 million on the permanent addition, we are also forced to bring in construction-style trailers to house students and spend additional funds while construction is going on, which is something that we would like to avoid. Generally speaking, just looking at the cost estimates that we've had across the lifetime of this project, which has, truly predates even my 7 years on the school committee. In 2019, we were looking at $12.9 million. And as you can see, that has escalated exponentially as we have continued to have estimates done as far as what a permanent building addition would look like. It is an extremely expensive ask. We are all very much aware of that. Speaking as someone who will only be looking at this through the lens of a taxpayer, as all of my kids will have matriculated out of the system by the time this opens, I would like to see it get started sooner rather than later, so I am spending less on it since I will not be using it. But I also just think that it is fiscally the most responsible option to move forward as quickly as possible. So those were our thoughts on timing, and we can...
And just to clarify with the PMC, what you're seeing for those quotes, those are the construction costs, because when we had it priced in 2019, we didn't include furniture technology, we just got the construction costs. So I wanted you to see just the construction costs. So when you look at 2024, 29 million of the ask for the total build is the construction, actual construction. So you can see from 2019, when we first looked at this, the project has more than doubled in cost. The soft costs for furniture are typically 25%, which is what gets us to the build ask for this year.
I have questions.
Yes.
Sorry. So if we're looking at a project that's going to take 3 years, it would be ready in the fall of 2027. If we delay any further from this fall, it's the fall of 2028. I can't read it, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so if we didn't move this forward in the fall and we waited to spring town meeting, the earliest it could open would be an entire year later, the fall of 2028.
Okay, so from all of our points of view, presently, if we are out of space in H. Olive Day, what can we anticipate, if that's the case right now, what are we anticipating is going to come forward to correct that situation over the next 4+ years?
So we, as Medora said, we are likely to lose special classrooms, like our art room, temporarily to house a classroom of students. At the Freeman, we've already lost the science room, likely the computer, technology, makerspace. All of those special classrooms that we currently house will have to be repurposed for general education. And potentially, we may have to bring forward a modular solution and have temporary modular classrooms if the enrollment growth continues to trend the way that it is trending. We don't have other solutions. We have, I know you've probably followed the challenges we've had at space when we were talking about the shelter. The Department of Ed came out to look at H. Olive Day before they talked about considering giving us funding for modulars or for other space renovations. There isn't an inch of space in that building, and they saw it right away, which is why they offered us potential grant funding. We have enclosed our server, and we're using that space. That was the tech storage as a classroom. The teacher's room is a classroom. The library office is a bunch of temporary walls that we've put up. We can only use 1/3 of the gymnasium for lunch because we have so many classes that we need the entire rest of the gym to have kids go through the gym program. We've got 3 staff members working off the stage. There just isn't any, there's nowhere else to go. Freeman, we had 1 open classroom, which has now been repurposed. So we don't have any additional classroom space at Freeman either.
Okay, so if we're going to be out of space at the Freeman, so the same can be said that the same actions that you're taking with H. Olive Day, you'll be looking at the same type of actions to be taken at the Freeman Kennedy.
Yeah, to bridge those years.
Okay.
Until we
I
have
have another
additional.
question, follow-up, if I may. So, part of the solution, if our enrollment moves upward as is anticipated, the cost of a potential modular solution is not in any of these figures here.
No, that's why we're trying to move this forward so we can avoid that situation.
But it sounds like you're not going to be able to avoid it if we're not going to have anything in place, and you're already using space that is probably not going to be
Yeah, and when we brought this last year, that was the goal, to move the project forward at the time, because we were trying to avoid it, but we were asked to do another expanded study.
Oh, I know.
So you're correct. Modular solutions, we have talked to other districts. Those temporary modulars are a lower cost. They're construction trailer. They're not permanent builds, but they are a couple of get the site work in the which adds. So we're trying hard to, we potentially could relocate our office. I mean, we would move things around the best we can to try to avoid that, but, the longer we wait, the less avoidable that's going to be.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a question, and I asked this question as a parent, and I'm going to ask it in my official capacity. But, so you mentioned that 7 preschool classrooms will be available in the addition. How many do we have now? And is that going to create additional placement spots for the preschool program, which is a revenue-generating program? So
It is.
have you thought at
Yep,
all
so
about that?
we currently have 5 preschool classrooms in office space. This has 7, so it has 2 additional classrooms. We have done some estimating, and that would bring the majority families that are waiting into the pre-K. We provide pre-K programming per the state law for students that have a disability as of their 3rd birthday. We are expecting, as overall enrollment grows, the population of students receiving services will grow proportionally. So we are projecting that we're going to need additional preschool classrooms in order to meet the needs that we are mandated to meet, but with that also provides additional spaces, because they're all integrated preschool programs, to bring in more additional families. It is a critical need in Norfolk. I think, while I think the committee really worked hard to be fiscally conservative and try to not overbuild, build just what is needed, to do it in one building project, because we know there is a population of citizens in Norfolk that are opting to age in place, and we know that this is a hardship. We also have a growing population of young families who have no access to early childhood education in Norfolk. We have 70-plus families on our wait list for preschool, and the needs of the whole community in terms of access to early childhood education, appropriate class sizes. Ours have been growing every year compared to our neighboring communities. We have to take all of that into consideration. So we're trying to be fiscally responsible in recognition that it's a hardship and it's a big cost, but we are also trying to serve the entire town from the educational perspective. So.
And then, sorry, just one final question. With this particular build that was chosen, is there an option to further expand? So, as we all just heard, enrollment is going to continue to increase over time. So, is there an option to potentially expand upon the potential addition, or have you thought at all about future state solution?
Yes, a couple of things there. I mean, there certainly would be probably options to continue to expand the Freeman. H. Olive Day is 35 years old. 20 years down the road, you're going to be needing additional changes or renovations or updates there, so you would have some capacity to look at that space as well. What we tried to do was build in enough flexibility that we are not immediately out of space. I know people were frustrated with the original Freeman because MSBA participated in that project. You couldn't build for future growth and have the project be reimbursable. So we are trying to build a little bit of flexibility in that you could move some things around, you could shift some things, but not to overbuild, because we also don't want to build empty spaces that we're heating, cooling, and managing that aren't of critical need for the town. So we built in some flexibility, but it is built really to the projected need for the next about 15 years.
Ken?
Question, so the pre-K classes we're talking about, where you're getting 2 more, how many students go in one of those classrooms, the average?
That's a
Rough
hard
number.
question to answer, because some of our pre-K classes are half-day. So we actually have 2 classes, a morning and an afternoon, which would be about, it could be 13 to 16 kids in the class, so 25, 26.
Right, so if we have a waiting list of 70,
Yep.
we can accommodate 50, this isn't a 50-year building, it's already not big enough.
Yeah.
We've already failed the exercise because we're not even building for today's demand.
Right. We built the capacity in preschool to bring in the majority of families on the wait list, not all, because preschool is optional. When we went through this process before, people felt that it is not a self-sustaining or self-funding program. It is tuition-based, but the tuition we bring in does not offset the cost of staffing. So we tried to build enough capacity to meet the needs, plus grow a little bit, but it is not providing, it won't bring everybody who is interested in early childhood in. Although, if the town is in a better financial position, we can afford the staffing and changes, we could restructure some of those office spaces, restructure some of the play spaces to add additional rooms.
How many years on the projection, and obviously it only goes out to 10 years?
It goes out 10 years.
2034. When will all the new space be totally full? Within 10 years?
We built to the 10-year estimates with a little bit of flexibility.
So it's not a 50-year building. We're still...
Well, nobody will project
the
out
building
beyond.
will, I know, but the building
Yeah.
will last 50 years, but if things even continue on a fraction...
So in 10 years, we're going to look to build a new school and tear down the HOD and build a brand-new school someplace
Right.
else.
There might be
That's-
another, and that's what I'm saying, you might have a
That's-
bridge year, and you'll have to readdress the H Olive Day. So we're trying to build to meet the town's need, but again, we don't want a wing that's heated for some, 15 years out, we might need it.
15
When you
years
know you
worth
have
of
another
worth of
aging
HVAC
building.
might be a heck of a lot cheaper than construction costs 15 years from now, though. So there's that.
But we'll have to address
You
the
can
H
carry
Olive
that
Day.
on the floor. Rob?
So the preschool kids, do they count in the Chapter 70 per pupil numbers? Pupil numbers?
I'd have to check on that, Rob, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that. I think so, but I want to confirm.
What, all of them, or just the kids that we're required to serve? That's the split on that question, too, is it?
Yeah, I would have to check. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
The other thing is, I think that
I don't want to have a
as-
discussion about budget, but go ahead.
just as new families continue to move in, as we just heard, preschool is going to be a need, and so I think it's just going to be a concern for the taxpayers that they're not going to, be able to send their kids to school in here with such high taxes. Like, I think that's going to be a potential problem. And then you also have the other side of the equation, the taxpayers that don't have kids in the school at all. So, I really do think that the preschool consideration is a major consideration here, especially because it's going to be taking up an entire floor of the expansion.
Do you have a follow-up, Rob,
Yep.
too?
When did we go to full-day kindergarten?
2014?
14, yes, it was right after I had to pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same time most.
So that's kind of an interesting point for voters. Like when we opened Freeman Kennedy in 2012, we didn't have full-day.
Full-day kindergarten.
So you've doubled really kind of your kindergarten census 2 years later.
Right.
So, it's not really, we're not dealing at apples to apples when you
Right,
talk
we
about.
need a full classroom where we would
2012,
have two
yeah.
classes in one space prior.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Anything else? What's the number?
All right, here you go. And we can skip
I've been
this
asking for
slide.
25 minutes now.
I will share this with you. This is what is included in the design services. If you want to go back to it, we can. But the number is $4,345,042. Do you want to speak to how that number got generated?
Yeah, so that's utilizing historical data of what we would anticipate for hours for designer fees, as well as projections for an owner's project manager. And that is not our full fee, as well as the owner's project manager's full fee. That's up through bidding. Because if you remember, Superintendent mentioned that come again to fall town meeting with a number in hand. So that's through document development, through bidding to get that number in hand, and then we would close out our remaining fees with the cost for the actual construction of the project. Again, a couple other items, contingencies for OPM fees, as well as bid bonds, legal fees, et cetera. So that's what makes up the $4.3 million.
The goal of this committee, if I could just jump in, is to mimic as closely as possible the process and procedure that was undertaken with the fire station, where there was a full bid available at the time that the town made a decision to move forward, so that it was not a situation where it was a generalized estimate or a range, and then the number comes back higher, lower, or very far afield from what you had originally anticipated. So while we have discussed it as a schematic design article, it includes more than just straightforward schematic design. It includes bid documents.
Jonathan?
Just for avoidance of doubt, the 37.9, is that inclusive of this 4.3 million? So all things being equal, when we get past this stage, that number's going to be 33, 32 and a half, whatever it may be. Okay, thank you.
Your math skills are coming in very handy tonight. Ken?
So my question this is for AI3, is that the?
Yes.
So you're basically taking 15% of the actual construction cost, the 29.7 million, the 820-ish per square foot construction cost, not the soft cost. Your fee would, assuming we were to vote to approve this, would AI3 sign something with the town saying you're not going to increase your fee if this project isn't $820 per square foot, this project becomes $1,000 per square foot or $1,200 per square foot? That's something we just did, and we found an architect that said, yeah, we won't, and they just said, oh my God, we left a lot of money on the table, but we agreed to.
So this fee represents, how we generate our fee is not based upon a percentage of construction costs.
But it's that 15% number I cited earlier.
And it's not 15%. So we look at historical data.
14.89%.
Let's not
We're splitting
debate
hairs.
fee, guys, all right?
Would you be willing to to not increase your fee, is my question.
As long as the scope of the project. Absolutely.
So the project's the 36,000 square feet.
Yep.
If the project becomes a $50 million debacle a year and a half from now, you're not going to come back to us for more money.
As long as it's 36,000 square feet, that's what the fee would be. Yep.
I'm confused. We're bidding this, though.
We're bidding that.
The 4.3 million is going to be subject to bid.
No.
I think it's part of,
Part of the
when we did
RFP.
the original bid for the feasibility, we had the capacity to expand that work if we so chose, or the building.
And
committee.
that fits within the,
RFP.
there's not a cap on what you can increase it by or anything like that?
I have to look at the language of the,
But it did, our original RFP for this project that I think we had 4 or 5 architectural firms
Yeah.
respond to, did include moving through this phase with the architect that was selected.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any, so the town votes, what?
and the fee, again, is standard for the industry.
No. We vote this the town votes this in the spring, it goes to a ballot override.
So we're recommending bring it to the fall town meeting. If it passes at the town meeting, it also has to go to a ballot, special election. And
So
have-
wait a minute. I'm sorry. I thought the spring town meeting, or fall town meeting, sorry.
Fall town
Yes,
meeting,
right,
yes.
yeah, okay.
So
I
if
just
it
got back
goes
from
forward
vacation.
to
Where
the
am I?
November town meeting, then we would have to do a special election, most likely in January, because
Yep.
it has to pass at town meeting first.
Yep.
And then at the
Right,
ballot.
okay.
Yeah. And a 2/3 majority at town meeting.
Jonathan.
Just keeping my question to the scope of this 4.3 million, is there a number of the, if that's an override, what's the impact of the average tax bill?
So we did have Todd
debt
Lindmark
exclusion,
do
not to
an
split
estimate,
hairs.
and for the 4 million, for the cost of design service, the estimate to the average tax bill is $171.92.
171.92 per year. For over
And
how
that's
many
from-
years?
That's from Todd, that's from us, or the,
That's from Todd Lindmark.
right.
Over how many years?
25, I believe, is that correct, Justin? Did you do it over?
We would incorporate it into a band, John, and then if the project were to move forward, we wrap it into the overall project.
Okay. Thank
The
you.
band is a bond anticipation note.
Yep.
Microphone, no. Yeah. A ban is a bond anticipation note, so we would probably ban that $4 million figure, and then assuming that the project would proceed, we wrap it into the overall project cost.
Rob?
So, okay, so the 171 is just the impact of the 4.3 million. So the overall project would be, 6 times that. Okay.
It's a little less than 6 times, one.
Interesting
About
enough, it's about 15%.
1,052.17 was the estimate
All right.
105217 per average
for average household.
tax bill.
Okay.
But you, just so I'm clear now, and I think we talked about this, and I
Yes.
always feel like it's who's on first, that includes
The
this.
171,
So
yes.
on top of,
Yes.
okay, all right.
It's a whole nut.
Yes.
I love being under average in this conversation.
Has anyone got any other questions? Okay, so we'll be discussing, we're not going to discuss and vote on this tonight.
Okay. I'll send you
You can send that,
copies of these
yeah.
slides. They are on the our website, but I'll send them to you. And if you want to see any of it again, Select Board meeting was broadcast, so we have this presentation.
Depending on how our discussion goes tonight, we may be voting on it next week.
Okay.
But for sure by the 16th.
Okay, and if you want us to come back, if you have any questions, let us know.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'd like for us to say we're going to hear from Justin next. Give us an update on where the town is at with the budget, or the warrant article development. I have to run out for a second. Excuse me.
Am I waiting for you?
If Jonathan wants to take over, he can, or we can wait for me. I'll be right back.
Now's your chance, John. Careful what you wish for.
While we're waiting for David, I'm going to do things a little bit differently here. I'm going to give you the capital list that was submitted. I think it's good to share information. And then I'll just, when David comes, I'll tell you where we're at, et cetera. So this is not final or anything. This is just what all the departments
taking the
submitted for
1-minute
their
recess also.
capital list.
This is the wish list.
Yeah. So one of the questions I heard when I was upstairs, one of the questions was asked about the additional capital improvement items in the school project. I would say that you probably don't need to speak with Matt. I can answer that question. For example, the $550,000 mechanical system chiller, I think where we're at on free cash and capital, that would take up maybe 3/4 of the capital alone of that. So I would say that if we were to proceed with that project, I'd probably recommend that it would be encapsulated in that project. Because if you look at like our previous last couple of capital, we haven't even spent, $1.6 million in capital the last couple of years. And I'll give you the sort of the preview. I'm probably not going to be spending that much in capital this year too. So I would probably wrap it into the overall project cost. I don't think we can afford it in the free cash aspect of things.
I misspoke then earlier, didn't I? I think you heard me.
Yeah, I was listening. It'd be very tight.
I know you appeared
550
shortly after that.
I mean, 550 we definitely could incorporate, but then you're
Right, no, I understand.
neutering the rest of.
I
capital.
understand.
Yeah.
I wanted to prompt a response from you. It worked.
There you go.
So I have a quick question for
Sure.
Justin.
Sure.
Do we have an idea of what the average household tax increase is going to be for next year?
Pre any overrides.
Pre any
No,
overrides?
I'm not, I can't, well, I could. So I have to say this at the caveat, this is a snapshot in time. We set the
That's all
rate.
I'm asking,
We
yeah.
set the rate in November. So the current estimated tax bill, what we'd say for average, single-family home is about $10,707.
Thank you.
And next year's when the fire department building hits.
Yeah.
Correct, starting January bills.
Yep. I have that too, if you want. And once again, snapshot in time, so just understand that. Don't hold us to that. We'll say the proposed estimated tax bill would be around $11,140, because the
So
estimated tax.
$1,000, a little over $1,000.
The impact from the fire station is about $433.
Oh,
Yeah, 10-7 to.
oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My skills aren't as good as Jonathan's, so.
So we have a couple of slides that, Todd and I have talked about this. We want to be transparent about what all these projects are, because we have Tri-County, we have school expansion, we have the fire stations already. So we can forward those slides to you in advance whenever you talk it, just so you have it in your back pocket.
Yeah.
But like I said, snapshots in time, we don't set the rate till November.
Okay.
So, David, I have a question
Sure.
for maybe to follow up with Ingrid on, so as Justin just mentioned, those capital improvement projects for the school, it doesn't look like we want to put them in here. So when we vote, are we voting on the warrant to approve the 4.3 and potentially the capital improvement costs? Does that
We are
include
voting on the
that?
4.3, and there would have to be,
A separate
it
warrant?
would probably, as Justin said, when we voted on the full school
Yeah.
Okay.
project, we would roll them into
It'll
that.
probably be encapsulated.
So that
Okay.
the 39, whatever it was, would
Yeah.
go up. It would go down by the 4.3 and then go up
by
by
the-
whatever we added
Yes.
Exactly.
as capital.
Yep.
But I
Which
guess
was
my
about
question
3
is,
and a
like,
half.
do they need to start, well, I guess she said no, when the cranes are on site, but there are some projects in there that I feel like they could start sooner rather than later, and so delaying them, is that gonna,
There are a couple, well, except I don't think, as Justin just said, we don't have the capital funds without doing an override to do them.
yeah,
And I don't, my personal opinion is there's not going to be a stomach to start lighting up this if we're going to then make, it's a smaller increment on the full project than it
Yeah.
would be to add an extra $1.5 million or whatever to this.
okay.
And it would obviously come off the bottom of the future one. And you're right about that. It might be worth talking to your new facility guy, who's got the same name as your old facility guy, coming to
Maldridge.
the meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'll give you a preview. So I gave you the capital list. There's quite a few sort of facilities projects. That would probably be a department that I think you'd want to hear
Yeah,
from.
absolutely. Yep.
So I've already talked to him about
All right,
that.
cool.
And we
All
can sort of run through that. But let me just give you a quick snapshot.
Sure,
of where we're
all
at.
right.
So last week we got, last week our free cash was certified. So free cash was certified at $3,287,426. So that's our figure. So that's what sort of guides us in determining what we're going to do in capital and transfers for fall town meeting. So Todd and I have just finished meeting with all our department heads and reviewing capital. And this is the capital list, as I mentioned, is sort of, this is the wish list, right? So now our job is sort of cull this list down and figure out what we can do. We're also considering, budget transfers and everything associated with that. So I think our game plan would probably be this, is I think Todd and I can have a recommended sort of list completed by next week, and maybe we can forward that to you all. I would say that the select board, we need to present to the select board first, and so that would be the 15th, I think, October 15th, so we'll probably be able to meet with you October 16th
That's the last time we're meeting.
with all the departments and stuff. So, like I said, I would want to get you this list next week so you have time to think
Okay.
about it and review it, but we'll be before you the 16th. Some things that we're keeping in mind is, last year, if you guys remember, we used almost $1 million of free cash to balance the budget. We used $605,000, in free cash. We used $195 for ARPA funds, which we won't be able to utilize anymore. And then we used $150,000 of the special ed reserve fund. So that was about $950,000. So something that, we'll consider, because I'm sure people are going to ask, I know we've asked about free cash figures before. We particularly are very conservative, knowing that we utilized so much free cash last year that we likely will have to use that amount to balance the budget moving forward. Then we usually have stabilization, and we don't like that. We've been pretty
We
transparent.
talked about this last
It's very
year.
dangerous,
Yeah.
right?
It's-
It is the situation we're in. We typically, in the fall, we appropriate funds to the stabilization fund. We do OPEB and any other budgetary transfers. So those are all the things that we'll be factoring in our, sort of our recommendation to the board and to the town meeting moving forward, so.
And you have any ballparks? I mean, the stabilization fund tends to be a significant chunk of this free cash.
Yeah, we typically do 200,000 or so in there, depending on where we're at. We did 200 last year. I think something else we have to consider is with Tri-County. Tri-County is sort of, the project's moving forward, right?
Yep.
And our estimated impact is $371,000 of that. We can't fit that in our operating budget. That's something that probably we're going to be looking for a debt exclusion as well on. But if we're going to do that, it's likely going to be at Springtown meeting. So to protect ourselves, if the town doesn't vote and approve it, we have to pay that bill. So we might allocate some money into the newly created capital stabilization fund to protect us just in case of that. That's not a long-term answer, but it might be a short-term protection. We obviously, if the town voted for a debt exclusion, we could utilize it for capital project anyway. So I think that's good financial management anyway, because once again, if we're looking to go out for debt, having stronger stabilization funds and reserves are better for us too. So I think that would probably be part of my recommendation, giving you a preview of what I'm thinking, and obviously I need to speak with Todd about it, but we probably will put a little more than usual in our stabilization funds.
I may have missed this when I was out, but I know it's only 3 months in, but is there a sense our revenue's coming in where we expected them?
Yeah,
Way higher than we expected them?
we're doing pretty well. Todd gave sort of his year-end review presentation to the board a month and a half ago. We'll probably have another presentation. I think we'll see that our revenues are pretty on target and so
Okay.
forth.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Justin on this? We're going to see you in 2 weeks, so we can also save stuff up and go at it again. Go ahead, Rob.
No, you hang one up first.
All right.
Go for it.
So Justin,
Yes.
free cash is generated by either, new real estate taxes that don't count in the levy yet because they didn't, they weren't there before. And then they go into the levy in year, 2, right? It's also generated by unanticipated revenue. So we underestimated maybe, excise tax.
Yep.
And it comes in higher. Because we're very conservative about our excise tax estimation. And we get very cranky when the advisory board says you can bump the excise tax up 50 grand.
When did we say that?
Anyway, we've said that before and been very cranky about it. Or it comes in because of non-spending, right? So could you give us kind of a big buckets on where this 3 point?
Good question, and we can sort of go in good detail about it, but there's a variety of things there. One, we carry over quite a bit of free cash from year to year, right? So last year, I think we carried over, I'm going to give you a ballpark, 1.2 to 1.5 free cash from the previous year because we had unreserved funds. We like to have that flexibility. Last year, our departments didn't spend to their full budgets. We particularly made some decisions there. Like I said, I've been very transparent about our budget. I'm very concerned about our budget moving forward. So there were some vacant positions that we said, let's keep them vacant for a little bit longer so we can realize some savings, et cetera. So our departments did a good job. Finance team did a good job, so we saw some savings there. Todd, when he spoke with the select board yesterday, there was we did pretty well on our interest income. We got maybe $300,000 more than what we had put in the budget before. It's a different environment. Interest rates were pretty.
We were still prudent investors, though, right?
We were prudent investors, and I think it showed in that increased revenue there. So it's a variety of things. It definitely was all of those things that you had mentioned there.
Just two quick things, public safety related, because obviously that's my wheelhouse. I see the 2.5 million for the ladder truck on here with, and I know that's talking about a possible shared expense with Rentham. I just want to point out 2.5 million is astronomical. That's a highly, highly custom truck. That's on a stock truck. That number's 23 to 25% high. 2 other towns in Norfolk County have ladders on order for 1.7, 1.8 million. 2 million is a custom truck, 2.5 million, there's a Dalmatian ringing a chrome bell as it goes down the road. So just
Those
food-
ladders are quints?
Quince, yeah. Just food for thought, that's a very high number, and I can back those numbers up if you need more info. The other thing I just want to, I see on the police side, obviously, you got 2, they're going to be long-term contracts with Axon, most likely body cameras and electronic control weapons. And to me, those just long-term shouldn't be capital items because those contracts are never going to end.
Yep, they wouldn't be.
They'll get you with in 5 years, this taser is dangerous, we have to sell you the new, and it's a vicious cycle with them and the camera. It's going to be a reoccurring, it should be a line item in their budget.
I think it already is a reoccurring, because I think we voted 2, 3, before you were here, move the tasers onto some sort of contracted thing. Maybe you weren't even here yet.
No, I wasn't here yet for that one.
Axon does a 5-year plan, basically, for everything.
I think we're already on it.
Yeah, because they're showing up on here as capital items, but it's,
Really
I put mine into the expense line just because it's something we're going to have to live with forever.
That's what my philosophy is since I've come here. Like, for example, the town, as you mentioned, they did tasers. The fire department had PPE in here. When these things are reoccurring expenses, I don't find them as capital. We try to put them in the operating budget. This is what it was submitted. Like I said, this is what was submitted. We've got some work to do.
They stick out as, things. Yep. That's all.
Thank you. Jonathan first, then you get to go.
This might be more of a comment than a question, so I'll keep it brief and we don't have to deep dive into this, but something jumped out at me on this, the road program, ADA sidewalk improvements. I don't have questions about the dollar or the purpose of that, as much as I just wanted to raise a concern that just on last week, 2 weeks ago, Village Green, I guess a developer put in sidewalks that we know not to be ADA compliant. Now, there's the mailboxes literally in the middle of the sidewalk. Like, not only is it not ADA compliant, it's not even just like sidewalk at that point. It's not sidewalk compliant.
Village Green.
It's off of Cleveland Street.
Okay.
So the reason I mention that is I don't know how that's going to be dispositioned. Are we on the hook to fix that as a town? Is the developer on the hook? Like, I don't know, and that's not where I'm trying to go as much as I just feel like that's another item in a never-ending string of items of development in town where developers do not hold up their end of the bargain to actually kind of do things the way they originally were either required. And my point in this, again, it's more of a comment than a question on this, is can we take enforcement of these types of things and put more money into legal and compliance types of things aside, because I continually see spend like this for us to kind of fix the shortcomings and shortcuts taken by ongoing development. And since development is just exploding and continuing, I think it's reasonable to expect that we're going to continue to have to pick up a lot of those pieces going forward.
I'm not going to get too into it because I think this is a different discussion, a different board, but I do want to bring context to that. That decision, particularly with the mailboxes, it wasn't solely a developer decide. It was a ZBA ruling in terms of what they were allowed or wouldn't allow to do. Now, could the process be a little bit differently to resolve it? Absolutely, and that's something that I'm talking with our team. That's pretty much what I would say there. The town isn't on the hook to fix it. We're finding a solution for that. The ZBA is having a special meeting next week, and I think we'll have They made a ruling where they said you couldn't move the mailboxes, but it's clearly not prudent to leave that mailbox the way it is. So we're trying to find a solution. That's what I'll say to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Rob, wait.
Well, I was going to note that, the chief there was quick to, cut the fire department and, give more money to the cops, but that didn't go without noticing. Serious program, though. The road program, our favorite thing, right? I noticed there's some out-year jump in here. Is that new? 250 to 980
It goes up.
in roadway construction, and we're going to do 980 a year? Is that?
No, I think that was just the way Blair made a submission. No.
So in other words, it'll go down when he realizes he's got to actually ask for the money.
And this is on top of Chapter 90 money.
Yes.
Our extra VIG.
All right. Anyone else have questions on this specifically? I think we will get into, this is the long list. This is not your final list.
No.
So dig and unless something jumps out at you, something that you need to slap it down and be concerned about it, it's probably not worth getting into detail on this, because it's going to be a shorter list in 2 weeks.
So just for my clarification,
Sure.
if we approve one of these items, and it's a multi-year project,
These items are specific to the year. So this
Okay.
is a 5-year capital plan, meaning the fire department thinks they're going to need this over 5 years. to
Okay.
do. The roadway is a good example. They want to spend whatever it is, they want to spend 400,
4 point.
whoa, 4 million next year.
See, the total is 44.7 too.
And then 200,000. So in other words, that number is just for the year that it's in. So if the fire department is asking for X, it's because they're going to buy something that year. These are not multi-year projects. They're not
Okay.
building projects.
That was my question.
They're like buying a car.
But those are those are estimates for future years.
Yes.
We're not committing to that.
This is for the
No,
total
we're not.
project.
We're not. When we get the presentation from them in a couple weeks, it'll be for a number that includes a short list of projects that will get done during this fiscal year. And then they'll come back next year to ask for a different list. What is that 4.1 million?
I don't know where you're getting from. Where are we looking at?
Total road program.
Roadway
Total
construction.
project.
Roadway construction.
That's
Roadway
the
construction is
980 plus
4.1.
980 plus 980 plus 980.
Oh, it's the
Right.
total.
It's the
This is the
90,
total-
it's every,
the total
everything.
for the project.
All right, so why are you asking?
So I'm saying that if there was something coming through, let's say that the board members and Justin and Todd agreed, so they would be coming forward with a capital list that would have 200,000 for roadway construction. Is that how I'm reading this? Because
Yes.
that is what is in the 2025 column.
Yeah, that's
Right,
what I
so
was
when they
asking.
come to us in 2 weeks, if the town decides to request money,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be somewhere it'll be $200,000 or less, depending on what they want to spend on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, there will be a short list of roads
Oh.
that will cover. I got confused because I
No,
was
it
looking on the
was.
second page.
I've already started doing my work.
So-
And so
okay.
I've started, I was like, where are you getting 200,000? That's the original number. So maybe my number's a little lower, clearly or higher, who knows?
So next week,
But
2
yes,
weeks, when
it'll
they
be
come
around.
back, there'll be a list of roads that they're going to do that'll come up to a price that's going to be
Perfect.
less than $200,000 or close. It'll be $200,000 or less, let's just assume,
Okay.
unless there was a lot of extra money.
Can I ask what a nitrogen generator is?
Yeah, ask him, Matt. I'll let him do the technical thing. We did this last year.
We've heard about this.
This was for corrosion in the sprinkler systems, and it's adding life to those systems. So we did it at the
We paid
library.
for it last
Got it.
Yeah, we did it last year,
Yeah,
but
sorry.
you'll definitely want Matt
Okay.
to speak to the technical aspect. of it.
Yes, Rob?
I want to note, the Freeman Kennedy expansion number is 44.7.
I saw that.
Like I said, these are just the submissions that are put in. This is going to be different.
Is it
It's going to
that-
look not completely, but it's going to look different from what you guys see. I just wanted to be transparent with the group and let you see it before, but also give you some thought about maybe, some of the departments that you might see. Obviously, the list we give you will sort of guide that, but, I think you're definitely going to want to hear from facilities. You're going to want to hear from fire in terms of the Quint truck.
We're getting a grant for that, and I hope it doesn't bind us to the cost of, it might bind us to the total.
Oh, the
cost
SAFE
of-
grant was the covering half at 1.2.
It's covering 1 million.
Will that get us the Dalmatian?
Might bind us to the
2.5
large.
million.
yeah.
The million.
Bringing
There's
a
a
gold
Dalmatian codicil in the grant.
And the 2.5 is a figure that we said was going to be sort of more conservative and high on the end, but we've talked about it being a lower figure, hopefully. And also with that figure, we're also splitting it 2 ways, right? So let's say the total cost is $2.4 million. We're going to cover 700,000 of it, and the other communities.
And
For
Rentham
some
pays
reason,
for
I
the
remember
dog
that
food for the donation.
750. I remember
I have some
$750,000.
questions about that.
Okay, let's wait until the chief is here.
Oh, yeah, he's
okay.
not going to like me. I do have a question, though, about and I don't know if Justin's, it could be more Ingrid, but the architect situation with Freeman Kennedy, what I'd asked him about, will you agree to sign some sort of agreement to not raise your fee? Because we know with these things, they go up to RFP, and it's based on 15% of the total construction cost is how.
But we're voting a number.
Right, we're voting.
$4.3 million.
We're voting a number, but that doesn't mean they can't hand us a bill and say, hey, this project was 50
Yeah,
million.
But I think if we want to ask for, we can get a copy of the contract, and the way he described it was that his costs were based on the square footage. And unless they change the square footage, his fees can't go up. It's the way I heard
And they
him
won't
say
be
it.
able to pay for it too. If you do a debt exclusion, you're not going to be able to pay
However,
for a higher fee.
I can ask Ingrid to send some clarifying.
It's one of those with the RFP for the architectural firm, it goes out there, and it goes out with an estimated project cost, and their fee is, it's always 15% of that estimate, is how they came up with that number. I mean, I called that number up before we ever saw it. I said, here comes the number, I'm waiting for it, there it was. Oh, no, we don't do it based on 15, everyone does, that's how it works.
Well-
So, but there's always that,
We need to see the contract.
it's of that project cost
Right.
now. It's gonna cost more than that.
So,
So, yeah, okay.
so.
I don't want to debate terms of an architectural contract that we don't have in front of us.
That's not my question.
All right,
It's
go
not going to
ahead.
be my question.
All right.
This is a procedural question.
Okay.
At what point are we going to see the balance of the project come before us? The 30, what did they say?
I think we've got to, we
A
have to
year from
approve
now.
the 4.2.
So it would be
Part of that
fall-
work goes to bid,
Yeah.
and then those bids come in, so yeah, it will be a year. We have to spend the 4.3 before we understand what the
Fall.
rest will actually be.
She's
So we
looking at
could-
fall 2025.
Yeah.
So
And
that
an
figure.
override in January
Right,
2026.
so the balance of the, oh, help me, the balance of the
It will be like
original
34 million.
brick and mortar, okay, brick and mortar, 37.9, she said is going to give us, take away the 4.3, gives us whatever. So that's the figure.
Yeah.
Hey, I do accounting all day long. I'm my brain is fried. So the balance of that is the figure when they're ready to come to us, is the figure that could be higher by the 12 to 15% escalated cost, because it's going to be now another 18 months before we see
It
that.
could be higher by any unknown percentage based on what happens with just general economy and construction costs between now and the point.
But the other Justin
Right.
did say that, and I'm not going to say it's accurate, but he did say that the cost that was presented assumed
At least one
When it goes to
escalation.
bid.
At least
Yeah.
one.
not now, it's when it goes to bid. So
I would say probably
it's the cost for,
factored
they were calculating it on a year from now, so.
Yeah.
Sounds like they
But if
want to
it-
bid it next spring, so
Yeah,
by fall,
right.
we have a true number to,
Right.
Yeah.
and it won't even be a true number, it'll be a number with another escalation, because it'll be for a project a year
Right.
later.
All right. Anything else for Justin? Thank you, sir.
Thank
We're
you.
going to discuss what we're doing next week and the week after, and then vote minutes. So-
Yeah.
I'll just listen,
Okay.
so I know what I'm preparing
So
for.
next, we have a meeting next Wednesday. Right now, we have the assessor who's able to come to talk about the assessor article. We also, I've talked to Rich. Rich was supposed to come tonight. They got pushed because of the schools. Only Rich can come next Wednesday. And they said, well, only Chad can come on the 16th. And I just said no to them coming on the 16th because our schedule is now full. We're going to have to finish voting on warrant articles and do the capital stuff. Both Chad and Rich can come on the 10th, which is next Thursday. So I'm asking you all, can you do the 10th? Ken
Instead
cannot.
of,
In addition to?
Instead of the 9th. Instead of the 9th.
Yes.
And what's your I guess as a team?
unless you need to see that.
I take that back, no.
Okay, so we're doing it on the 9th we've got two guys that are already
I can't do
definitively
it on the
done.
10th.
Still trying to work on a space.
I understand that. We also may be meeting in the hallway, and I'll be holding a portable camera on my shoulder.
TV may be ready by
Okay.
then, but they are not sure yet. They are
I have a GoPro that I could attach to my forehead.
I'm going to call Ingrid tomorrow because she didn't respond to my email. But you might be able to go to the school.
Isn't there a community room in the fire station?
I wonder if it's fitted out.
So part of the reason we don't have a space, this room is occupied, and next door, 120, is Fire Station Building Committee is having a meeting that evening, and I did ask, are they able to hold it in the new fire station? But I guess it doesn't have the capabilities that they need, which we would also need, so.
But the capabilities in 120 are a camera on a tripod.
No, 120 has.
It's all fitted now.
Oh,
Yeah.
the last-
We've had one or two in there since it got
I thought it
upgraded.
was just a camera on a tripod. Okay.
No, it does have, it's just smaller
Okay.
room.
All right.
But they are also, they expect their meeting to wrap up by 7:30 or so, so potentially if we wanted to push it to 8 o'clock, I know that's not ideal. So basically, we're waiting to hear if the green room is available, if the library is available, and whether or not they have the AV that we need, and if not, that at 8 o'clock.
The
is sort of
AV, we do not have to be broadcast
Don
live, right?
is joining by Zoom, Don Clark, so, I mean, I could always set up my computer so that people can see, but.
Can we somehow muscle them out? Their building's built, it's just about done. The money's
They're
spent.
congratulating each other. They're going to be popping champagne.
They're designing the plaque to go on the front wall.
So we're going to be missing 2 members. I don't know about Mike's availability, so we could be down 3. Let's just keep it on the 9th. Tell Rich that he's coming by himself.
I mean, we could also do it all virtually the way we did last
We
time
could do a
as well.
virtual meeting as well. I like seeing you guys, though, but whatever.
There's a lot less crosstalk on a virtual meeting. You can keep order better.
I mean,
Can you set me up with a mute button, by the way?
people,
A live mute button? All right, so we'll do it on the 9th. Eric and I will talk the next,
out where.
if it's either online or it's wherever we figure out. And it'll be Chad to talk about the planning board stuff. I would like to start voting on articles next week, too. All righty? Sound good? We have minutes from the September 18th meeting that Ken forwarded out to everyone. I did have a look. Thank you,
I
Eric and
move-
Ken.
I move.
He's got a
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, motion to accept the minutes as printed from was it
18.
18th.
18th?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes are adopted, Erica. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So,
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thanks.